So guys, the new G Wagon is finally here, and oh hang on, wait, that's not the new one. There you go, that's the new one. It's a little bit blink and miss it with this facelift. You even feel a little bit ashamed calling it a facelift, that's how blink and miss it is. And it caused a lot of people to make this comment that, well, aren't you just better off getting the older one? But with this generation of G Wagon, that comment might actually be really valid, and I think it's a bit of a unique case for the G, where our love of these and our desire to want to own one is not linked to the usual upgrades and things that you get in facelifts. Rather, something else intangible about the G that we love. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to post the argument that is it not better, if you really love the G for being a G, to just get the old one versus the new one and save yourself a bit of money. We're going to compare them both technologically and see what the differences are. We'll compare them both inside as well, arguably where the bigger changes are, and then we will talk about the market as well, how much money you can save buying a previous one, and then in the end, how do we feel about it? Do we think enough G survives in the old one versus the new one? That's what today's about, so let's drive the old G63. Guys, I have leveled up my editing setup from average to epic thanks to the sponsor of today's video, who is FlexiSpot, with these two awesome products I'm going to show you today that you're going to wonder how you've lived without in your work setup. The first one is the BS14 ergonomic office chair and the E7L height adjustable standing desk. Now, as comfortable as this desk is to do work over a long period, sometimes I just want to stand up and do some editing. And that's where, come on, that is cool. Right? Now, not all standing desks are equal. You can set this to any height you want and you can save it into the memory function and can take loads of up to 150 kg. So if you want to have dual monitor set up, all your other stuff that you have on here, laptops, accessories, like I have cameras, or even snacks, you know, because priorities, right? You can put it all on here and it's not going to struggle at all. And then when I'm feeling tired, I can edit like this as well. Setup was also easy with just 3 plugs per motor of each leg, and then everything else was done with Allen key and a screwdriver, and some well-considered cable management to finish the whole thing off. Now guys, this is a special chair that's been designed around the anatomical model of the human body in order to give you the best possible seating position, particularly for longer working hours. So, for example, we've got adjustable lumbar here at the back that you can move up or down as per your liking. The back section moves smoothly with your body as well. You've got the headrest and a really nice breathable layer. So when you're sitting and doing longer hours like I do when I'm editing, you're staying nice and cool on this chair as well. You've even got the ability to have an 8-degree forward seat tilt as well for those times when you want to get a bit closer in on the action, and then you can bring it back down as well as the arms, everything customizable to the type of seating that you need for longer hours. So these two together, an absolute powerhouse of getting work done, particularly over longer hours like you and I do. And I might sound like an old man, but I'm really excited about how this is going to lessen my back pain and help me with my posture. So guys, use the links below, check out FlexiSpot during this sale period and upgrade your working environment from average to epic. Huge thanks to FlexiSpot for supporting us and this episode. Now back to the car. So guys, the G Wagon has been around for a long time, and it's had so many different variants and weird things happening, but it's a car that has stood the test of time, which is why Mercedes give that tagline to it of stronger than time. And I think the reasons that we love this car go beyond the incremental changes every year that this car gets better and better as it's done over the years. And there's something else, there's something more fundamental about it that we love, which is perhaps why this comment of you'd still be happy with an older G might be valid. So that's what we're going to discuss today. Let's first talk about the facelift G Wagon. Initially, when you look at it, barely anything seems to have changed, right? You've got a bit of a change on the front bumper here with a more modern day looking AMG looking lower front, but it's not a massive change. It's something that someone like I really has to point out to you guys and say, look, here's where the changes are. The lights are the same, the grill's the same. Yes, you've got an AMG badge on the bonnet, but things like these, and we'll discuss this as we go on this video, you can probably add yourself later. Apart from that, no real changes. Even the wheel options are going to remain pretty similar in this side. And on the rear, hardly any changes at all. In fact, none worth talking about. So if you're all about the aesthetics of the new G, versus the old G, I don't think you're really losing anything. And if you really, really care, you can change the bumper if you want. But in terms of aesthetics, we're not losing much. Under the skin, you could argue that the new one has a lot of changes, but does it? Our old one is 585 brake horsepower, 850 Newton meters, and a 0 to 60 of over 4.5 seconds. Our new one is a mild hybrid, so it has a little bit more in some scenarios. So it gets the ISG that gives this car a boost of around 20 HP and 200 Newton meters, but it's only in certain scenarios, it's not all the time. Will you feel a real world performance gain? Probably not. Then we may argue that, okay, but the new G63 has that amazing new semi-active suspension system with the hydraulic pumps and the active dampers that are going to revolutionize the way that this car drives dynamically and in terms of comfort. And you'd be absolutely right, it's going to set the new G on a whole new level. But there are 3 Gs that will be available in the facelift. There are the performance and the off-road package, which both benefit from that suspension, but there's also the standard G63, which will have the exact same mechanical suspension that this one does. So that's only if you get those additional package cars will you benefit from that suspension. So again, something to bear in mind, that in terms of pure mechanics, you're still getting the exact same V8 with pretty much the same power in terms of comparing to the standard version, the same suspension, etc., etc. You're not losing out on much unless you really want that higher level of driving dynamics that of course then the performance G63 and the off-road G63 will definitely offer you in the new version. So far I would argue, certainly design-wise on the outside, we're talking a car that is pretty much identical. And heritage is such a part of the G Wagon, and I think this is a big part of the tick box for a lot of people, that you're maintaining that beautiful shape, that beautiful car from the past in a modern day car. But how much of a downgrade is the interior in this? That's something that we do need to discuss. So let's jump in and I'll remind you of what was inside the new one versus what we have to live with in this older one. One top G tip for you guys is, if you want to show respect to a G Wagon or its owner, make sure you slam the door with the correct force, because that is how you respect a G. Now let's talk about the interior, because this is in part, of course, a luxury car as well, so the interior is an important part of it. And what you see in front of you right now is the old interior. Oh no, wait, sorry, it's the new one. It's so confusing because they look so bloody similar, because they haven't changed that much. And this, just like the outside, is part of the point here, that you're not losing a lot. Yes, the new one has a whole new system, but the actual structure of our front dashboard here and everything is pretty much identical. In fact, there's some things that are the same and some things that you might actually prefer. For example, you still have the exact same quality of interior, so the manufacturer options are still inside the Gs of 463 generation, just like this one is. This is a manufacturer G with quilted nappa, and we've got the green stitching to go along with the green Hell Magno on the outside. Then, of course, the system, yes, it's ancient. It's 8 to 9 years older. But it's not a touchscreen, which for a lot of us is actually a positive, because we still have the nice scroll wheel here. And how much do you actually use that element, and how much do we actually, in reality, just plug in our phones and use CarPlay or Android Auto? Let's be honest with ourselves for a moment. It tends to be these more than anything, right? The only downside to this car is that it is wired CarPlay, which is a bit of a pain, and of course you'll get wireless in the new one. The off-roading is of course exactly the same, so you've got your diff locks, we don't need to talk about that. And the other cool thing is, you maintain the lovely IWC physical clock here in the center console, which we've lost on all Mercedes and AMGs. They only leave one as a digital one on the inside, which is still good that they've got that partnership. But when you love watches, you like to see physical ones. So this is the last gen of G Wagon to have a physical IWC clock sitting in the center console, which I think actually counts for a lot in a luxury product. Then we have the steering wheel, which I think this is the best steering wheel that they've made. This is the best AMG steering wheel. It's chunky, it's steampunk-like. When I first saw it, I almost thought it's kind of Pagani-like. It's great. And while this one is missing the drive select units because it's got heated steering wheel, some wiring issue apparently that you kind of heated, and the AMG drive select units, don't worry, you can retrofit them, and I'll leave a link below to a friend who does it, at least in the UK. It costs about £1,500, but it's worth doing. But yeah, on a lot of cars that you'll still have the AMG drive units as well, so you don't miss out on that either, which is a big part of the driving element. But now let's talk about the things that you lose, because we have to be fair about this, right? And you lose a fair amount. For example, of course, you've got MBUX, the new system in the new car, which is vastly superior. Let's be completely honest, okay? It's quicker, it's easier to navigate through. You've got wireless CarPlay and Android Auto. You've got the really good vocal assistant. In fact, it builds upon the tech bits as well. So we've got like extended ambient lighting within the vents on the new car as well. You lose things like the invisible bonnet, which is great for off-roading. And one of the things that affects me the most is the driver zone, whereas in this car, you've got that old one, which again, 8-9 years old designs. You get the up-to-date proper driver zone in the new car with all of the different designs, all the customization available to you, off-road mode, etc. All of that is actually really good stuff. And then on the actual system, you don't have AMG track pace, etc. in this. All you've got is the dynamic select options and a few little screens here and there to show what the car is doing. Then, for example, finally, self-steering and self-driving was added into the G Wagon thanks to cameras being added up there. So you get that extra bit of luxury where you can just let the car drive itself that you don't have in this. And then finally, the new steering wheel, I know a lot of you love it, and you obviously, you only get that in the new car. But all of this stuff that we just spoke about, it's tech, it's luxury, etc. How much of that matters to the G experience? Because isn't the G experience other silly things that all of us love about this car, which is why it stood the test of time? For example, you still don't lose the fact that you're sitting up in the sky above all the other common folk in your fake throne sitting upon a ladder chassis. You've still got those amazing doors and the sound that they make that we love so much. You've still got that incredible off-road ability that's pretty much no better in the new version. We still have our beautiful wheel cover too, which is so important. And let's not forget the massive boot space that is honestly more truck than it is SUV. I mean, if you really wanted to, you can change this fuel cap to be the new AMG one like in the new car. You could probably make those side sills black like the new car as well. And like I did in my G63, you can probably change this Mercedes badge to the Ultravox symbol. So a lot is still doable. And let's face it, half the reason we love this thing are the looks. That's why they've not changed. That's why it's stronger than time. And you have 95% of the looks still surviving in this 463 version. And of course, you still have the V8 and its wonderful sound. Money can't buy happiness, but it can buy a G Wagon. So a lot of what we love about this car isn't where the updates have come in. I think a G is still a G without them, at least static physically. To answer the rest of that, we do need to drive this, right? And we're going to do that in a sec. Before that, let's see what the state of the market is if you do want to pick up an older one, and how much will the new one cost. Now, the new car in the UK starts at 184k and it only costs 1400-ish to add the performance package. So not a bad deal in today's market. But that can easily climb to above 200 when you start adding the more interesting manufacturer options. So by no means a bargain. But what is a bargain is the pre-facelift prices. Let's take a look at those. We can go as far back as 2019 to the original versions of these because hardly anything was updated. So they are nigh identical to the car I've shown you today. And you can see that those are sitting now at the market at around about 109k for just 50,000 miles on the clock, and some really nice examples out there as well. That's £100,000 saving almost on one of these new ones. And we've just covered all the things that still remain G. So that's a huge saving for if you just want the G for being a G and you don't need it to do all the extra things. It's food for thought. But to really answer this question, to really answer it properly, we need to drive the car, right? So that's what we're going to do. Let's drive it and see, do we need those extra bits, or are we happy enough just with this as it is? Oh guys, I love driving G Wagon. There's few things that put a smile on my face when I'm having a bad day, like driving a G Wagon does. But I'll tell you what, it wasn't always like that. I actually bought a older G Wagon. This was, I think it was called a 463 edition. It was like the last of the gen prior to this. And I remember picking it up. I think I was just young and I wanted to do that tick box of, you know, having a G. And I've never been so miserable driving out of a forecourt as I was with that car. And I think part of the reason was that the handling was awful. It had, you know, the recirculating ball steering, like the Sprinter, basically shared with the Sprinter. But it wasn't just that. Even when I got the Edition 1, the first one of this gen, I just didn't enjoy it, and I kind of sold it fairly quickly for me. And I think it was because I didn't get the G. And when you don't get the G, and there's a lot of you out there who don't get the G, then you just wonder, why does this thing exist? It's so tall, it's not dynamic at all, it doesn't really sound as good as the other AMG V8 SUVs at all. Instead, it's got this kind of truck rumble that it does. You know, it's not particularly comfortable in the back. You're sitting quite high. The steering wheel and the seating position isn't superb. You know, it's very, very truck-like in that way. So I didn't get it. I wasn't very happy with it and got rid of the original one. It was only as I started to get older, I blame it on age, okay? Maybe it's more understanding of cars. But as I started to get older, the more I started to drive them, the more in love with them I became, and there were certain reasons for that. And then many years later, after I'd done a lot more work on the channel, showed you guys a lot of stuff, experienced a load of cars, I decided to go for one again. This was back when we had the G factory tour as well, you guys will remember. And I gave it another chance. So I was a bit older, dare I say a bit wiser, and I came to this realization that not every car needs to be chasing nths and tenths. Some cars have a completely different fun factor that you just cannot replicate in a car that's trying to be perfect. And the G Wagon is one of those cars. Some cars are actually good in spite of the fact that they're not good at nths and tenths. So I wanted to give it another go. And from that point on, the G Wagons I owned after that, I loved them. I love the fact that you sit up high. I love the comfort factor. For example, I'm about to jump in here, right? This is important to me in G Wagon. We're gonna go into seats and I'm gonna give myself a butt massage. And you guys know, I like a good butt massage, and that's exactly what's gonna happen now. Maybe it's my age. It could be my age. I'm gonna blame it on age. Maybe it's experience, it's probably experience. But being a bit older, being a bit more experienced, I love the fact that this is a cosseting, tall tank of an AMG that I can drive almost one-handed. It's got a wonderful rumble that I've grown to love over the years. And then when you do want to drive fast, and you do in this car, God, is it unpredictable. You don't know, is it gonna go left? Is it gonna go right? It's like wrangling a wild animal, but that's the fun of the G Wagon. There's so many sports SUVs out there that are so much more dynamic than this car. They can all bugger off. Because trust me, this is the most fun you will ever have in any performance SUV. Okay, you're looking at me weird right now. Let me clarify, okay? Let's go in Sports Plus. This thing, it takes the fact that it's an SUV and that it's a powerful SUV and takes it to its logical conclusion that, holy crap, I'm having to wrangle a wild animal. And that's the best part of it. It's so fun because it's not easy, because it requires effort, because it requires concentration. And then you've got the sound, you've got still some AMG dynamics because AMG did build this car from scratch. Some people say like it only has 585 brake horsepower. Look at the correction I'm having to do here. It's more than enough for this car. It's like the perfect amount. And it feels damn fast in it. The G Wagon doesn't actually care that it's a tall SUV. It doesn't care the fact that when you go around this bend, there's so much body roll and you really have to be aware of it and correct for it. All of that is part of the charm. It's why I love this car so much. So it's an unapologetic performance SUV. It's like, look, this is an SUV that drives fast. I'm tall, I'm hard to handle, I'm not nths and tenths, but you can have fun with me if you learn how my body moves and how to control it. And it makes me question other performance SUVs, great ones, like, you know, even Cayenne Turbo, that you guys know I love. It's so capable, but then a Panamera is better. It's not bringing anything new to the table. It's still slightly hindered versus a saloon. This is not like that. It's not trying to be a saloon. it's proud of the fact that it's a G. It's proud of the fact that the driver has to live with it to learn how it moves, to really enjoy it. And I think all of that, all of this element that I love about this car remains in this old one versus the new one. If anything, with the new one, particularly the performance, that has this great suspension that's going to reduce the body roll massively because it can change the spring rate in a millisecond on each wheel, etc. So you lose kind of this wrangling of the wild animal, and it becomes that much more better handling, more like a normal performance SUV. Won't you lose some of the charm that we're talking about here? Because as any AMG customer, you always think, right, go for the performance, go for the top one, the most dynamic one. But is that really the point of the G? I'm not convinced. But what I can say is, I love this car as it is. I love how unruly it is. I love the fact that I need to know what I'm doing with it. I love the V8. I love the exhaust sound so much. All of these things, they mean so much. And then when you want to calm down, you want to slow down, and you want this car to go anywhere, do anything, it is there. It is ready. It is prepared. Come hell or high water. I've done everything with my Gs. You know, they've saved my Mercedes classic cars from being stuck in the mud. They've been through snow, wet, off-roading, anything that you can throw at it, it will handle. But it's a proper AMG still. I can say without any doubt that this current G63 463 is the most fun performance SUV you will ever drive. And for an entry price of 110, 120k, that is what a new M3 costs these days. And for that price, you get entry to this world of crazy, auto icon that is the G Wagon. Able to put a massive, massive smile on the face of someone like me who drives everything in the world. But this is just better. It's more fun. It's the G. It's perfect. So guys, that's our look back at the current G63 or the old one, if you like. Answering the question, is it still good enough to buy versus the new one? I think from my side, it is an emphatic yes. So if you enjoyed this episode of RBR, please do like and subscribe. Subscribing is really important because new manufacturers always look at that figure. They don't look at the hard work that we put into the videos. So if you want to see more of your favorite manufacturers who aren't on RBR yet, please do hit the subscribe button. Take a moment to do that, and we'd really appreciate it, and you will too. And I'll see you guys then.